Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, a massive week one matchup. The Miami Hurricanes, the Florida Gators. Many of you guys know that we've taken a look into this matchup from just about every angle that you could look at this matchup from. But one of the more contested conversations around this football game, who's got the quarterback edge heading into this matchup on Saturday? Cam Ward, Graham Mertz, what quarterback do you want running your offense? And I mean, I've read Twitter, I've read the message boards, I've read the YouTube comments. This is a very contested discussion. And, I think largely for good reason. I think where you got to start with this discussion is what kind of quarterback do you want running your offense, right? If you're a Michigan program in 2023, you're probably taking a guy like Graham Mertz, who is extremely efficient at the quarterback position, completed 73% of his passes, 20 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Florida did not ask Graham Mertz to go out and win a Heisman Trophy, but they asked him to run a clean offense. And Graham Mertz, with suboptimal pass protection, really did that for the Florida Gators in the 2023 year. Then you look at Cam Ward and say, a little bit more of a gunslinger, right? If USC is trying to take a quarterback and they say, hey, we got to put a lot of points up on the board, we need to ask a lot of our quarterback, they're probably taking a guy like Cam Ward, who I would project goes higher in the NFL draft. I think has a little bit more arm talent. There are throws that Cam Ward makes that there's just not a lot of quarterbacks in the country that can make those throws. A little bit of a high-risk, high-reward quarterback, right? You look at the big-time throws, 24 big-time throws. That's more than Graham Mertz, but 21 turnover-worthy plays. That is significantly higher than Graham Mertz. And so I think one of the most important conversations you can have in terms of discussion, what quarterback that you want running your offense is, what kind of quarterback are you looking for? I mean, both of these quarterbacks are very good heading into Saturday. I don't think there's a single question mark about that. But what do you want from a quarterback? That's kind of how I think you kind of approach this conversation. Want to dig into this conversation a little bit more and then talk about a few things that we haven't yet discussed regarding this matchup, particularly from the Florida Gators standpoint in terms of Montrell Johnson. Sounds like he's going to go. What does that mean for Florida? Cam Waite's getting the start at right tackle. What does that mean for Florida? Want to get into a couple other talking points as well. Now, before we do, and as always, to both the Miami and Florida fans, one, the amount of support, as we've talked about this football game, has been amazing. But more importantly, light it up in the comment section. The best part about doing these kind of episodes is the debate, the discussion, the arguments that we have in the YouTube comments. It's a blast for me. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start with quarterback Cam Ward. And I think we all have a pretty good understanding of what Cam Ward can bring to an offense. He is a guy that can significantly elevate an offense in terms of what he can do at the quarterback position, particularly with the playmaking ability. Now, yes, does Cam Ward hold the football a little bit longer, a lot longer than a lot of other quarterbacks that you see across the country? Yeah, absolutely. But Cam Ward also makes really some throws that there's just not a lot of quarterbacks that can make those throws across the country. And so one of the things that you love about Cam Ward is there's really not a throw or a play in the playbook that you can't really ask Cam Ward to make because he can make them all. And you kind of appreciate, especially Miami kind of working with Tyler Van Dyke the last couple of years, you can appreciate a quarterback that can play a little bit of backyard football. And when the first or second read or plays breaking down, you can trust your quarterback to kind of go make some plays. Now, I think for a lot of Miami Hurricane fans, I think you're looking for Cam Ward to take that development in terms of, hey, we want you to make those plays. We want you to be a difference maker at the quarterback spot, but we also want you to make sure you're taking care of the football, because you look at this Miami Hurricanes roster and say, it's an extremely talented roster around Cam Ward. He's going to have a phenomenal run game to work with. We think he's going to have a phenomenal defense on the other side of the football. Cam Ward, you don't necessarily need to be a hero for this Miami Hurricanes team like you had to be for Washington State. I think that's something that kind of gets left out, as Cam Ward gets, a little bit dragged for being a hero quarterback and putting the ball in harm's way. He kind of had to at Washington State because the pass protection was a disaster. They had no run game to work off of. The defense wasn't very good. So if Washington State was having success, it had to come on the back of Cam Ward. And so, yes, you can be critical of Cam Ward putting the ball in harm's way at times, but I think the other side of that coin is, Cam Ward largely had to do that at Washington State to win football games. You dive into the numbers a little bit more. Average depth to target, 7.7 yards. He's not necessarily a quarterback that always pushes the ball down the field, but when he's asked to push the ball down the field, completes 40% of his passes, 20 plus yards down the field. He can make those throws. Washington State, I think, one, didn't really have the playmakers to work vertically, but I think more importantly, they just didn't have the offensive line to hold up in pass protection. And so I think the average depth of target for Cam Ward probably doesn't paint a real picture in terms of what Cam Ward can do pushing the ball down the field. But again, I think you're looking at Cam Ward and say, all right, he's going to make 24 big-time throws last year in comparison to Graham Mertz's 15. He makes big-time throws a little bit more consistently, but he also has 21 turnover-worthy plays compared to Graham Mertz's 6. And so you get Cam Ward, you get a difference maker, you get a dynamic quarterback that can make a lot of plays, but also might be doing a little too much at times. And I think one of the more fascinating dynamics is, do we see Cam Ward dial that back because he has a team around him that I think is a very good roster heading into 2024? Now, flipping over to Graham Mertz, you can say a lot of the same things for Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz had miserable pass protection in the SEC last year. But you take a look at the numbers, 73% completion percentage, 20 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Now, I know a lot of Miami fans will say that completion percentage is a little artificially high, which is probably accurate. I mean, Florida ran a lot of short intermediate concepts, a lot of screens, a lot of swing passes, a lot of high completion kind of route concepts that make that number go up a little bit more. But similar to the conversation with Cam Ward, when Graham Mertz was asked to push the ball down the field, which was only 10% of his throws, 20 plus yards, he completed 41% of them. I think people forget that Graham Mertz was a former top 100 prospect coming out of high school. There is some legit arm talent with Graham Mertz that I don't think enough people probably appreciate. Now, is the dynamic playmaking the same as Cam Ward? No, probably not. Does Cam Ward probably have a little bit better of an arm talent than Graham Mertz? Yes, certainly. And so I think for Billy Napier, he probably values a quarterback that is going to be a little bit more efficient, not turn the football over, not make some of those losing plays. And you look at Mario Cristobal and why they went out and got Cam Ward. They want a quarterback that can elevate the ceiling of this offense. And that is certainly what they got with Cam Ward. I think the big question mark here is, do we see Cam Ward dial back that, kind of hero ball that we saw with Washington State? I think one of the conversations that Florida was really poor in creating turnovers last year. They had only 3 interceptions all year. That can Florida force Cam Ward to try to do a little too much and, capitalize on some of those turnover-worthy plays that we see Cam Ward sometimes have? I think that's a really big storyline in this football game. So I think to kind of finalize my thoughts on the quarterback edge, I think there are 2 quarterbacks that, one, are very, very good quarterbacks, at least in my opinion. Number 2, I think they're 2 kind of different quarterbacks that are going to get utilized in different ways. I think Mario Cristobal has the quarterback that he would want, and I think Billy Napier probably has the quarterback that he would want. If you were to ask Billy Napier, what quarterback do you want in this matchup, he might answer Graham Mertz. Mario Cristobal, I think, would certainly answer Cam Ward, as evident of how aggressive they were to get him out of the transfer portal. A couple other storylines that I want to go to. Montrell Johnson sounds like he's going to go. I think the big question is, how much does he go? Right, listed at the top of the depth chart heading into this matchup, got his knee scoped 3 weeks ago. This is a really big storyline, not as much in terms of him running the football. I would be, quite frankly, would be surprised if we see Montrell Johnson tote the rock 20 times in this football game, because I do think he's still coming back from that injury. I think the bigger conversation to be had with Montrell Johnson's presence is those passing situations, because, one, he's really the only experienced running back that you have who is good. I mean, he's the only experienced running back you have, period, for Florida. But I think more importantly, he's been very good in pass protection. And so I think the presence of Montrell Johnson is going to be probably less present in the run game and a little bit more present in the passing attack, not only because he's a very good pass protector, but you take a look at Montrell Johnson. He was the 3rd most targeted pass catcher in this Florida offense last year, had 41 targets. Montrell Johnson is very good coming out of the backfield and being a pass catcher. So I think the presence of Montrell Johnson, a guy that when we first recapped or previewed this game, I should say, we said probably not going to go. Sounds like he is going to go. I think the question is, how much does he go, and then what does his presence mean for Florida? Inevitably, it's massive for Florida, because this is really the only experienced running back you have in this magnitude of a game. You want a running back that's caught passes out of the backfield, that's pass pro, and that you can trust to tote the rock and have good ball security. Montrell Johnson is really the only running back that you have that has shown that on Saturday. Big storyline. Second storyline, Cam Wade's getting the start at right tackle. You go back to the film of Cam Waits, and I think there's some context that needs to be added. One, he's lost a little bit of weight, but more importantly, you go back to late in the season, he got the start at tackle against Florida State. He struggled in pass protection against some of those twitchier, bendier pass rushers, specifically a guy like Patrick Payton, who really tested him on that outside shoulder. And Cam Waits is a offensive tackle with the size that he has. It's very hard to go right through him because he's 350 pounds. But you can kind of test the athleticism of Cam Waits. I think my question is, Ruben Bain, a little bit more of a speed to power guy that just wants to go right through offensive tackles. Maybe you match him up with a guy like Austin Barber, who's a little bit smaller, maybe struggles with the speed to power a little bit more. And then can Miami maybe capitalize on a guy like Elijah Austin, who's got a little bit more twitch, a little bit more motor attacking that edge? That's probably what I'm looking at in terms of Cam Waits starting a right tackle. I think the good news for Florida, and Cam Waits got a really high ceiling. If Cam Waits beat out Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, you probably feel pretty good that Cam Waits is going to be a solid right tackle in this football game. My eyeballs are going to be on Cam Waits because what we've seen from Cam Waits hasn't always been great, but he's had a full offseason. He's finally back healthy. Kind of excited to see what Cam Waits can do. The last thing I want to talk about is there's a lot of buzz around these Miami tight ends. This is something that I'm kind of interested to see how Florida prepares for, because the tight end production for Miami was abysmal last year. There's not much film in terms of Miami centering tight ends in this passing attack. I expect Miami to play with two tight end sets relatively routinely in this football game. One, because they want to run the football. They want to control the time possession. They have a good offensive line. They have very good running backs. But more importantly, there's a lot of growing buzz in the Miami Hurricanes program regarding these tight ends being difference makers in the passing attack, right? Whether it's Elijah Arroyo, whether it's a guy like Riley Williams going into year two, whether it's a guy like Elijah Lofton, who's going to be a true freshman. You look at Florida's linebackers, Shamar James, Pup Howard, two hyper athletic linebackers, but specifically with Pup Howard's case, the instincts and kind of the eyes have not always been great for Pup Howard going back to his true freshman year at South Carolina. Can you test Pup Howard and some of the discipline when he's dropping back in zone or kind of operating in man coverage? Might be something Miami might be able to attack in this football game. A lot of different keys for both of these programs. Wanted to hop on one, give my 2 cents about the quarterback discussion, but more importantly, talk about some new storylines that have developed since the last time we've talked about this football game. We'll wrap it up there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.